He sat in the last row again. Torn shirt, quiet eyes, and shoes that had more holes than cloth. His name was Zion. No one really noticed him. Not the teacher, not the students, not even the guards at the gate. He had become invisible a long time ago. Zion didn't speak much. He didn't laugh. He didn't raise his hand in class, but he listened. Every word, every detail. While others laughed or whispered jokes, Zion was busy remembering things. He had a strange memory. He could hear something once and never forget it. But in school, that meant nothing if he didn't look smart. One morning, the science teacher asked a tough question. The whole class went silent. Even the best student couldn't answer. But from the back, Zion raised his hand. The class turned. Even the teacher looked surprised. Yes, he said. Zayan stood up slowly. He gave the correct answer step by step, word for word, just like it was written in the book. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the teacher's voice became sharp. Did you cheat? Who gave you this answer? Zion shook his head. No one, sir. I remembered it. The teacher laughed. Don't lie. You couldn't even speak properly last month, and now you answer like a book. Zion tried to speak again, but the teacher's voice grew louder. Get out of my class, right now. Everyone stared as Zion picked up his torn bag and walked out. He didn't cry. He didn't look back, but his hands were shaking. Outside the classroom, he sat under the old neem tree. He opened his notebook, the one where he always wrote small things, thoughts, words, feelings he couldn't say out loud. He wrote one line. One day, they'll remember this moment, and I won't forget either. That evening, he walked home. Slowly, his house was tiny. One room, one bed, broken fan. His mother wasn't home yet. She worked at 2 houses, cleaned floors, washed dishes, and came home tired. She didn't talk much either. She was too busy surviving. Zion took out his notebook again. He started writing a letter, not to his teacher, not to his mother, but to someone who didn't exist. He called the letter to the future me. He wrote, they don't believe in me, but I believe in you. I don't know where you are, but if you're reading this one day, please don't give up. He folded the letter and put it under his thin mattress. No one would read it, but it helped him breathe. The next morning, he returned to school, but the teacher didn't let him enter. Come back when you learn how to respect rules, he shouted. So Zion went to the library instead. It was quiet. No one cared if he sat there. He picked an old science book and started reading, page by page. He didn't have a pen, so he remembered everything in his head. He went there every day. While his classmates were in class, he sat in the corner of the dusty library, reading, remembering, dreaming. One afternoon, the librarian walked up to him. Why aren't you in class? She asked. He hesitated. I got removed. She looked at his eyes for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. You can read here, but keep it quiet. That day, Zion smiled a little. It was the first time someone had spoken to him kindly in weeks. At home, he began writing more letters, not just to himself, but to others too. Dear world, he wrote, why do you only see rich kids with clean shoes? Dear teachers, do you know how it feels when no one claps for you? Dear Dad, where did you go? Each letter felt like a small scream, but there was no one to hear it, so he kept them hidden. One night, while writing by candlelight, he thought, what if I send one of these letters somewhere? He didn't know where, but he remembered hearing about a blog run by a retired teacher in another city. People said the teacher liked reading stories from students, so Zion copied one of his letters neatly onto a fresh page. He folded it carefully, borrowed 5 rupees from his mother, and posted it. He didn't expect anything. He didn't even tell anyone. Weeks passed. He returned to the library every day, kept reading, kept writing, and kept hoping quietly, until, one evening, something strange happened. He returned home and found his mother standing at the door. She looked confused. In her hand was an envelope, white, clean, official looking. She said, it's for you. Zion stared at it. His name was written on the front, not just Zion. It said, to Zion the boy with a voice. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a letter. He read the first line aloud, barely breathing. My name is Professor Rayan. I read your letter online, and I have something to tell you. And then Zion's eyes widened. His lips parted, but he couldn't say a word, because what came next would change everything. Zayan. Read the letter again and again. He couldn't believe it. Someone, far away, had not only read his words but replied with kindness. The letter said, you have something rare, a voice that matters. Keep writing, even if no one listens now. Someday, the world will. There was more. At the end, the professor had written, if you want more books, just tell me. I'll send them. I believe in you. Zion folded the letter carefully and hid it in his school notebook. For a long time, he just sat there, thinking about those words. I believe in you. No one had ever said that to him before. The next day, he returned to the library with a strange energy. He wasn't just reading now, he was learning with purpose. His eyes moved quickly over the pages. He memorized things, connected ideas, built stories in his head. At night, he wrote them down, not for marks, not for school, but for himself. He started writing letters again, not to his father anymore. That part of his heart had closed. But he wrote to others, letters with names like to the boy who wants to quit, to the girl who cries in silence, and to the ones no one sees. He poured out everything, his pain, his thoughts, his hopes. Each letter felt like talking to someone who needed love. Someone like him. He never sent these letters. He folded them neatly and hid them in an old shoebox under his bed. One afternoon, his English teacher caught him scribbling during library period. She snatched the paper from his hand and read it aloud mockingly in front of a few other students. "To the world that forgets poor boys like me," she read, then laughed. "How dramatic. You think you're some kind of poet." Zion stood frozen, his face burned with shame. He didn't say a word. "Next time do your classwork," she said, dropping the letter into the trash as she walked away. He waited until everyone left, then pulled the crumpled letter out of the bin. He didn't cry. He just folded it again and put it back in his notebook. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling for hours. Then he did something he had never done before. He wrote a letter to the professor. It was short. "Dear Professor Rayan, thank you for your kindness. I still don't know who I am, but I think I want to be someone who makes others feel less alone. Please send anything you think will help me learn. I will not waste your time, Zion." He posted it the next morning. 10 days later, he received a brown package at home. His mother looked surprised. "You're getting gifts now?" she asked with a half-dashed smile. Inside the package were 5 old books: psychology, storytelling, one on how to speak confidently, and 2 others about famous speeches from history. Each had sticky notes inside, written by the professor. Page 32, "Read this when you're tired." Page 78, "Sounds like something you'd say." Zion felt something rise in his chest, hope, but he didn't tell his mother where the books came from. He had learned long ago that dreams were safer when they were secret. At night, when she fell asleep, he would light a small candle, sit near the window, and read. One night he came across a line that made him stop breathing. "Words are bridges. Some people drown because no one builds one for them." He stared at that sentence for a long time. Then he whispered to himself, "I will build bridges with words." He opened his notebook and began writing again. But this time, something felt different. He wasn't writing a letter. He was writing a message for everyone. He imagined it being read by 1,000 people. He imagined someone reading it while sitting alone, feeling broken, and then feeling a little less broken. The next morning, he took that letter, rewrote it carefully, and placed it on his small wooden table. Then he paused. "What if I sent this out?" he thought. "What if it helps someone?" He didn't know how to share it. He didn't have a phone or internet. But he remembered the blog where his first letter had been shared. He found the address again, borrowed 5 more rupees, and sent his new letter in a small white envelope. 2 weeks passed. Nothing happened. Zion returned to his library routine. He read, he wrote, he studied, but deep down, he wondered if that letter had even been read. Then, one afternoon, as he was walking back from the market, a boy ran up to him with wide eyes. "Zion, is this you?" he asked, showing him a screenshot on a phone. That was the letter, his letter. But now it had a title, "The most beautiful letter I've read all year." Below it were thousands of comments. People writing things like, "This saved me today," and "Who is this boy? I want to hug him." Zion stared at the screen. His chest felt tight. His mouth was dry. "Is this really you?" the boy asked again. Zion nodded slowly. "Yes, but please don't tell anyone." The boy gave him a strange look and walked away. That night, Zion opened his notebook. He added something to the top of the next blank page. "People are listening. Now, but what do I say next?" He didn't know. But the world was beginning to notice, and somewhere far away, another pair of eyes had just read the letter to eyes that belonged to someone who would change Zion's life forever. Zion woke up early. He hadn't slept much. All night, he kept thinking about the people who had read his letter online. Their comments echoed in his head. "Who is this boy? His words made me cry. I feel like he's talking to me." It didn't feel real. For so long, no one had listened to him. Now, strangers were saying his words mattered. At school, students had started whispering, "I think it's him. Can't be. He's too quiet." Zion kept his head down. He didn't want attention. He didn't know how to deal with it. He just wanted to keep writing. Keep learning. That was enough. But life had other plans. 3 days later, his mother handed him another envelope. "Another letter for you," she said, raising her eyebrows. Zion took it carefully. It was thick. He went outside, sat under the old neem tree, and opened it with shaking hands. It was from a man named Mr. Arif, a retired professor who had once taught at a university in Lahore. The letter was written in kind, careful words. "Dear Zion, I read your letter online. I am an old man now. I've spent my life teaching thousands of students. But your words, they shook me. I don't know who you are, but I feel I've known you all my life." Zion's eyes filled with tears. The letter continued. "You see, when I was your age, I also felt invisible. My father thought I was useless. My teachers ignored me, but I kept reading. And one day, I stood on a stage and spoke about the pain I once hid. That day changed my life. Your letter reminded me of that boy. I want to help you in any way I can." Zion folded the letter slowly. His heart felt warm, not because someone important had written to him but because someone understood. That was all he had ever wanted. A week later, a parcel arrived at his door. It had Zion's name written on it in neat handwriting. Inside were 3 books, a simple notebook with a leather cover, and a small MP3 player. On it, a sticker read, "For your ears only." Zion plugged it in, using his old phone charger. He pressed play. He heard Mr. Arif's voice. "Hello, Zion. If you're listening, know this. Your voice has power. I've added some recordings, here lessons, ideas, speeches I gave to my students. Listen when you feel small. They're yours now." Zion held the MP3 player close. He listened to the first recording that night while lying on the floor beside his sleeping mother. It was about how every great speaker once felt like a nobody. It spoke of fear, failure, and how to turn both into fuel. Zion listened with wide eyes. It felt like someone had lit a candle in the dark room of his heart. He started staying up later. After his mother slept, he would light a candle, open the leather notebook, and write thoughts from the recordings. He called it his midnight book. He wrote, "I am not weak. I am waiting. Waiting for my turn to speak." One day, he took his mother's old phone, which barely worked, and used the voice recorder to speak aloud some of his thoughts. His voice shook at first, then grew steadier. He said, "Maybe you're like me. Maybe no one claps when you enter a room. Maybe they laugh at your shoes. But one day, they will listen." He uploaded the 1-minute voice clip anonymously to a small page someone had told him about. Then he slept by morning. The post had 2,000 plays and 70 comments. People were asking, "Who is this voice?" "I cried listening to this." Heart beat fast. He didn't know how to react. For years, he had spoken only to himself, to his notebook. Now, strangers were hearing him, and they cared. He recorded a second message. This time he told a short story about a boy who was thrown out of class but kept showing up to the library. He ended it with, "They can take away your chair, but they can't take away your mind." Again, the clip was shared. This time it crossed 10,000 plays. His voice was spreading, quietly, silently, powerfully. But at school, he remained the same, quiet, distant, forgotten. Until one day, a classmate named Rami passed him in the corridor and said, "Your voice. It sounds familiar." Zion looked up, unsure. Rami added, "That video, the one everyone's sharing. The one with the soft voice. That's you, right?" Zion didn't answer. He just walked away, but his heart raced. He knew now his secret wouldn't stay hidden forever. That evening, he opened his notebook and wrote, "I'm scared, but maybe that's how it begins. Maybe all big things begin with fear." The next recording he posted was different. It wasn't about pain. It was about hope. He said, "Maybe today was hard. Maybe you cried when no one saw. But maybe tomorrow is waiting to surprise you. Maybe someone out there is already praying for you." That message became his biggest yet. 30,000 plays in 2 days. People wrote things like, "I played this for my little brother who's depressed. This voice is helping me stay alive." Zion didn't know what to feel. Joy, fear, gratitude, all at once. He started receiving emails through the blog. One was from a woman whose son had stopped talking after his father died. She said Zion's words helped bring him back. Another was from a man in his 40s who said, "You reminded me of who I used to be." But the most surprising message came late at night. It had no name, just a line. "Tomorrow I'll find you." Zion stared at it. Who had sent it? Was it someone from school? A stranger? His hands trembled. Because for the first time, he realized he was no longer invisible, and someone was coming. It was just before sunset when Zion reached home. His feet were dusty, his bag nearly falling apart, but his mind was full. Full of words, voices, messages. Something was changing, slowly, around him and inside him. But that night, he felt nervous. That message, "Tomorrow, I'll find you," kept echoing in his head. Who had sent it? Why? His mother was already home, sitting on the floor with a bowl of rice in front of her. Her eyes looked more tired than usual. As Zion quietly walked in, she glanced at him, then at the books poking out of his bag. "You still reading those useless books?" she said without warmth. "You think books will fill your stomach?" Zion didn't reply. He just nodded and placed the books gently on the side. He had gotten used to her silence, her sharp words, her worry that never looked like love, but he knew it was love, just buried under too many hard years. That night, she fell asleep early. But Zion couldn't sleep. He took out the small phone, plugged in his headphones, and listened to the recordings from Mr. Arif. He paused on one that said, "Use your voice. It's the only thing they can't take." Then he opened the voice recorder and began to speak. Again, his message tonight was soft and personal. "I know what it feels like to live in a house full of silence, where the lights are on but no one sees you. But maybe you don't have to stay invisible forever." He posted it before sunrise. By noon, the clip had 50,000 plays. That same afternoon, everything changed. Zion came home early from school, because the teacher didn't let him join the class again. She still believed he was showing off, that he didn't fit. He didn't argue. He just walked away and spent the morning sitting near the closed library. When he reached home, he found the door already open. His mother was standing inside, holding something, his notebook. Open. His heart dropped. She had read it. Every line, every letter, every dream. Zion froze at the door. He couldn't move. He expected shouting, or silence, or anger, something loud, something painful, but instead, she looked at him with eyes full of water. She said nothing, just stood there, shaking slightly, holding the notebook against her chest. Then she whispered, "Is this really you?" Zion slowly nodded. A tear rolled down her cheek. She sat down on the edge of the bed. "I had no idea," she said, almost to herself. "I didn't know you were hurting this much. I didn't know. You had this inside you." Zion stepped closer. "I didn't want to worry you," he said quietly. "I thought you wouldn't understand." She looked at him. "I didn't, but maybe I want to now." And then, for the first time in years, she hugged him. It was tight, warm, real. Zion couldn't hold it anymore. He let the tears fall. Not because he was sad, but because someone had finally seen him, truly seen him. After the silence settled, she said, "I found an old phone of your father's in the drawer. It still works. Use it. Record your voice better. Maybe. People need it." Zion blinked. He never thought he'd hear those words from her. "Thank you," he said. That night he recorded a new message. This time, it started differently. "Tonight, my mother cried with me, not because we were broken, but because we're still trying." He posted it at midnight. By morning, it had reached 100,000 plays. It was shared by actors, teachers, even news pages. One comment stood out: "I want this boy on our youth podcast. We need his voice." Another said, "Does anyone know who he is? I want to give him a platform." And then came a message. This one was different. It had a name. "Amr Tariq, national talk show host." The message said, "Your voice shook me. I don't know who you are yet, but I'm doing an episode on unheard youth, and I want you to speak. Just your voice, nothing else. Are you ready, Zion?" Read it again and again. Him. On a national show? He looked at his old shoes, his cracked ceiling, and then at the phone glowing in his hand. He typed back slowly, "Yes, but I don't want people to see my face. Not yet." The reply came instantly. "Your voice is enough." Zion sat down, breathing fast. He felt something inside him grow stronger, something he couldn't name. Later that day he told his mother. She didn't smile, but she placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "Speak the truth. Just like you, right?" The next day Zion recorded his message for the show. It was 5 minutes long. Simple words, deep meaning, about broken boys, missing fathers, and the power of words. The host added background music, then aired it the next night. The message stayed on Zion's screen for a long time. "I know who you are now." His fingers hovered over the reply button, but he didn't type anything. His heart beat faster. Fear and curiosity mixed like a storm inside him. Until now, his voice had been anonymous. Now someone had found him. But who? At school? Whispers had grown louder. Some students kept watching him strangely. Rami, the classmate who had once asked about his voice, stared again but said nothing. Even the teachers were acting different. A few looked at him longer. One even nodded slightly when he passed her desk. Zion said nothing to anyone that night. He went to the rooftop of his building with the old phone in his hand and stared at the stars. He had grown up under these same stars, dreaming of being more than invisible. Now the world was listening, but it still scared him. He turned on the recorder and spoke softly. "Sometimes being seen feels just as scary as being ignored. But maybe that's what growth looks like. Maybe it feels like fear before it feels like freedom." He posted it without thinking too much. By morning, it had crossed 300,000 plays. Journalists wrote about the invisible boy with the powerful voice. TV shows quoted his words. His anonymous posts were being shared by celebrities and university pages. People were calling him the unseen speaker. Still, no one knew who he was. Until one afternoon, a small news blog released an article. Sources say the anonymous youth voice is from local school in Faisalabad. Zion froze. His city. His school. His secret was breaking open. Rami walked up to him during recess. This time he didn't whisper. "It's you, isn't it?" he said, almost in awe. "You're the voice everyone's listening to." Zion looked down, unsure what to say. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Rami asked. Zion sighed. "Because when they knew me before, they only saw my shoes, not my words." Rami nodded slowly. "Well, now they see both." But not everyone liked what they saw. That same day, Zion was called to the principal's office. He sat across from the man who once ignored his presence completely. The principal cleared his throat. "Zion, there's been attention on you. We've had calls. Reporters asking if you're the boy from the recordings." Zion said nothing. The principal continued. "I won't lie. Some staff feel you're causing distraction. We have rules about media attention." Zion looked him in the eyes. "I never asked for attention. I just spoke my truth." The principal leaned back. "Be careful. Fame is not always safe, especially when people are jealous." Zion nodded, but he wasn't afraid now. He had come too far. That evening, he found another letter in the mailbox. It was from Mr. Arif. Inside was a short note. "Now, they know who you are, but don't forget who you were. Speak, Zion, but speak with kindness, even when you face the unkind." Zion placed the letter beside his pillow. That night, he recorded his longest message yet. It was called For Those Who Never Got Picked. He talked about always being the last one chosen in school teams, the one no one called to birthday parties, the one teachers thought couldn't understand anything. He ended it by saying, "If you've ever felt left out, remember your story still matters. You still mattered." The clip exploded. 500,000 plays in a single night. Hundreds of schools across the country shared it. A university professor wrote a post. "I want this boy to come speak at our campus." And then, the invitation came. From Bright Future University, one of the country's top institutions, it read, "We are deeply moved by your voice. Our students want to meet you. We invite you as our youngest ever guest speaker. Come and speak, just as a student, but as a soul who reminds us why words matter." Zion sat staring at the screen, unable to breathe. Him speaking at a university? He showed the message to his mother. She read it twice, then sat down quietly. "You were meant for more," she said softly. Even when the world tried to shrink, she gave him her savings, just enough for a bus ticket and clean clothes. The day before the university visit, Zion stood in front of a mirror. He wore a simple white shirt, polished his worn shoes, and held his old notebook in one hand. He had no slides, no presentation, just words, just truth. The next morning he arrived at the campus. It was bigger than anything he'd ever seen. Students walked by wearing headphones, laughing in groups, sipping coffee. Zion walked alone, but he didn't feel small this time. Inside the auditorium, there were over 300 students. When he was introduced, the host simply said, "Some voices don't need names. They just need to be heard. Today, we hear one." Zion stepped up to the mic. His hands trembled. Then he spoke. "I wasn't supposed to be here. I was the boy who sat in the back row. The one teachers gave up on. The one who was thrown out of class. But someone once said your voice is the one thing they can't take, so I kept speaking, and now I speak for those who still sit in silence." The room was still, then applause. Loud, long, real. Zion's heart was full. He returned home that evening quietly. No media, no big crowd, just peace. But as he lay in bed that night, tired and happy, he checked his phone one last time. There was a new message. This one was short, from someone important. It said, "Your story must be shared on television. National stage, we need to talk." The sender, a major news anchor. Zayan looked at the screen and whispered to himself, "They threw me out of class, but now they want me on stage." The television lights were brighter than Zion imagined. The studio smelled of cold wires and warm makeup. Everything looked clean, polished, serious. He sat across from a woman whose face he'd seen on TV since he was a child. Maryam Junaid, one of the most respected news anchors in the country. She smiled at him, but her eyes studied him carefully. "So," she said softly, "this is the voice that's been speaking to the hearts of millions." Zion smiled nervously. "I never thought it would leave my notebook." The interview was simple, kind. She asked about his childhood, his love for words, the pain behind his messages. Zion answered slowly but honestly. He told the world about the night his teacher threw him out of class, about writing letters in secret, about Mr. Arif's books, about the first time he realized someone actually cared what he said. The show aired the next evening. Within hours, it went viral. Millions watched the full segment. The hashtag #Zayan Speaks started trending across the country. Journalists, celebrities, professors, everyone was sharing his story. And with all the love came something else. Recognition. People at school finally knew who he was. The same students who used to laugh at his silence now stared at him with wide eyes. Some smiled. Some tried to talk to him. Others avoided him entirely. But no one ignored him anymore. The biggest surprise came the next morning. He arrived at school and found a crowd gathered outside the main building. Banners, cameras, students from other schools. The principal stood at the gate looking flustered, but proud. Zion's name was on a poster above the entrance, welcoming our voice of courage. Zion Ahmed. He couldn't believe it. He walked past the crowd, quiet and nervous. Some students clapped, others looked confused. But Zion kept walking, step by step, until he reached the classroom, the same room where he had once been thrown out. It was open inside. A teacher stood waiting. The same teacher, the one who had once accused him of lying. She looked older now. Or maybe Zion just saw her differently. Their eyes met. She took a step forward and said, "Zion, I owe you an apology." He stood still, unsure. She continued, "Back then, I didn't listen. I didn't see you. I judged your silence, and I was wrong." Zion didn't know what to say. His throat tightened. The teacher looked around the room, then added, "If you're willing, we'd like you to speak to the students, right here, from the front of the class." Zion nodded slowly. He stepped forward and stood where the teacher usually stood. The classroom was packed. Every seat taken. Even students from other classes had come in. He looked at them all. The same walls, the same ceiling fan that never worked, the same blackboard. But everything felt different now, he began. "When I sat in this room last year, I felt small, unseen, unheard. But the truth is, I was always listening, and I was always learning. Just not in the way they expected." He paused, looking around. They thought I was too quiet. but I was just building something inside. A voice, a fire. The students leaned forward. Even the teacher watched with tears in her eyes. Zion continued, some of you might feel invisible too, like your words don't matter, like no one will ever clap for you, but I promise you, they will. If you keep showing up, even when the door is closed. The room was silent. And then, someone began to clap, then another. Soon, the entire class was on its feet, clapping. Zayan blinked back tears, but that wasn't the end. Later that day, the principal called him to the office again. This time, the mood was different, calmer, serious. We've been contacted by the education board. The principal said, they've seen your interview. They want you to speak at the annual youth education conference. Zion blinked. That's in Islamabad, right? The principal nodded. You'll be the only student speaker. They want to hear what schools need to change for children like you. Zion felt his hands go cold. Me, speak for all of them. The principal smiled. You've already been speaking. This time it'll just be louder. Zion walked home that day feeling the wind on his face differently. Everything around him looked the same, but inside, something was shifting. That night, his mother made sweet rice for the first time in months. She said, you're making us proud, but don't forget what it felt like when no one clapped. Zion smiled. The hotel room was quiet, but Ibrahim couldn't sleep. The email from Silicon Valley was still open on his screen. A possible partnership, global exposure, everything he'd dreamed of. Yet something felt off. That evening's meeting with Hamza kept replaying in his mind. The way he smiled. The way he said, you don't belong in our world. Hamza wasn't done. That much was clear. The next morning, as Ibrahim packed to return home, a call came from his mother. Her voice trembled. Beta, your uncle's gone. He left with the laptop. He said someone was going to pay him for it. What? Ibrahim froze. He took your codes. He said they were his now, that you stole his ideas. Ibrahim sat down, speechless. His own uncle, the man who once sold the generator, had now sold him. Back in his village, the damage was already done. His uncle had met with EduCore in exchange for payment and legal protection. He signed a document claiming he had developed LearnLite and that Ibrahim was just the boy who helped him type. EduCore released a press statement. The truth is out. The rightful owner of LearnLite is Mr. Yunus, a struggling inventor misunderstood by his family. Ibrahim was nowhere in the story. Online comments exploded. Some believed him. Many were confused. A few began turning. So he lied the whole time. This is why you can't trust these stories. Another fake hero exposed. He stared at the screen. The light didn't feel warm anymore. Even the Silicon Valley company paused their response. We'll hold off on our decision until this matter clears. Ibrahim was sinking. Not just in public, in private. He felt betrayed by his blood, silenced by power. Alone, again. But then another email. From a girl named Nimra, a blind student in Karachi who had downloaded the beta version of his voice code tool. Her message read, I never thought I'd write my first line of code. You made me feel smart. Don't stop, please. He read it again and again. Then he opened his code editor and wrote one line at the top of his next update. This isn't for courts or companies. It's for the quiet fighters. He released the update. It spread like wildfire, especially among disability schools, offline students, and grassroots NGOs. The app was now not just educational. It was a movement. But Hamza wasn't finished. He went live on a podcast, confident, dressed sharp, and said, Ibrahim, he didn't build it alone. I helped him, and now I'm ready to lead the project the right way. The host raised an eyebrow. So what are you saying? I'm saying, Hamza smiled, that Ibrahim is smart, but he needs to step aside, or everything will collapse. But at night Ibrahim got a direct message. From someone he never expected. A woman named Zora, a journalist, international, known for exposing billion-dollar scams. Her message, I believe you, and I think your story is bigger than you realize. If you're ready, let's show the world who the real thief is. Ibrahim replied with one word, ready? But he didn't know. Zora had already started digging, and what she would find would shake both families to the core.